You are watching
The
Xirtus.
moon and the sun are like, in a way, a microcosm or a macrocosm of Saturn and Jupiter. They play the same role in a way, but a distant role. So there's a great conjunction that happens between Jupiter and Saturn. This is something that I connected with you on years ago, right before 2020, where I was saying there's going to be a great event and it's going to be related to something that's going to be have to do with chemistry or technically virology. I didn't get into the details because I don't know. I just look at it as this repeating pattern that's been calculated over time. I don't know exactly what we got into. I called in on what was it? It was on Discord that I called in, and we were talking about it going into it a little
Based.
bit
Thank you.
before COVID broke out and all that stuff. So I knew something was going to happen at least because of this conjunction, and it's always a judgment.
Right. So there was a what was the thing? There was a thing that's like 2005 is the tsunami, which was a much more important thing than people actually realize, right? Like so the tsunami in 2005, and also isn't that Katrina? Let me remind myself when Katrina happened in 2005 as well, right? Okay, so 2005 is a very important astrological and in terms of weather, in terms of environmental shift. That's a
Yeah.
way I think of how important something is even just here, right, on a more concrete level. And so you have the destruction of things, but you also have there's a lot of conspiracies about common waters programs for mining and everything where they have releases of volcanoes or pressures for the purposes of extracting minerals and how that can be used to completely destroy coastal regions because you collapse a place, it creates this vacuum, the water's then pushed forward, and then of course you get this giant tidal wave that's 30 meters tall, right? And this
Yeah.
is something that we've seen happen a lot, but people said, no, that would be crazy that anyone would find like some sort of a place where water has been pushing into, purposefully collapse the cave mine, forcing water out, millions and maybe hundreds of millions of gallons of water towards places like Indonesia, right? And so this stuff all, yeah, that all these things that happened 19 years ago, it's interesting to think about them, right?
Yeah, and what it is you want to track event to event. So the fact that these things will happen in 20-year cycles are connected to, there's a pattern, just like Chinese astrology has years that are associated with different animals, right? So right now
That
we're in
was
a
the other thing is the 12-year cycle. So 19 is important. We're going to go into that, but just the idea of the zodiac, Chinese zodiacs in 12-year cycles. So if you think about it, 2024 to 2012, this is
yeah.
really an important. This would be in a historically in a normal linear reality. This would be a cycle, right? But of course, we don't know exactly what to say after 2012.
Yes. Yeah, you'll start having like hydrologic issues when it's associated with things that are deal with water and stuff like that. So right now we're in a dragon year, which is very hydrologic. So, we just seen a disaster with Helena and stuff like that. So there's a lot of different patterns that you have to start looking at, and you'll connect in and you'll see, okay, this is why the judgment or destruction happened in this way. But the
However,
thing that
Helena is doing really well with pop music right now. So everyone go buy Helena's new album, of
yeah.
course. Random
Oh, look at that.
synchronicity
It's
there.
all from Saturn in her album, but
Oh
that's pretty
yeah.
common. Yeah, it's pretty common to see a lot of these
Pretty
planetary.
pretty pretty
Well,
common. Pretty
yeah,
common, right? Yeah, for sure.
yeah. You got Venus, you got Saturn, you got all kinds of things. But yeah, so every 19 years, you're having a judgment period that happens when Saturn and Jupiter come into conjunction, or they're coming close to conjunction. So it's between this kind of 18 and a half to 20-year period. And the reason why it changes a little bit is because there's the precession of the equinox and there's a slipping that
And
happens.
what do we call that? We call that the pretty good conjunction or something like that. What's it called? The
It's called
great
the Great Conjunction. And then
Great
there's
conjunction.
also a grand or greatest conjunction. So there's these
Hmm.
great conjunctions that happen every 20 years, and then there's the greatest conjunction when it finally shifts into another sign. So for 200 years, we had this great conjunction happen in Earth signs, and that's when all of our presidents got assassinated or presidents died in office, were during these great conjunctions. And
Hmm.
then it slipped into from Virgo to Libra in 1981, 1980, 1981. So when that conjunction slipped, they tried to assassinate Reagan, but it didn't work. And then they ended up starting assassinating, uh, you know, people that are in the media and stuff like that. They got John Lennon, and he was a Libra, and then he was assassinated in, I believe, Sagittarius. So
Hmm.
it starts changing once that conjunction, that grand or greatest conjunction, mutates. It's called a mutation. When that mutation happens, that means that there's a whole new set of parameters. So these aeons, like I've been speaking about before, are showing you that there's a whole new parameter for a 2,000 year period and also a 26,000 year period. But then when these 200-year periods happen, they're also doing like a reset. So there's these constant resets that are happening in a micro and macro way,
Right.
and then they kick off different types of interactions that are going to happen, different judgments that are going to happen in different ways in society that are going to come right afterwards. So you'll have, when the great conjunction happens, that's when the judgment is being basically kind of worked out between Jupiter and Saturn, and then the unfolding starts happening right after that, right?
I was trying to
That,
find a picture to show that, because this is again why the Egyptian and the Mayan calendar 2019 is kind of funny, because 20 and 19, you really have this idea of like 13 and 20, because you have 19 and 12. So the 12 that are, you have 0 and 12, and you have 19 and 0. But you have like that repeating loop, which is interesting also because then you have the 7 cycle, the 12 cycle, and they all conjunct with that 19, because there's a cycle. I mean, granted, there's, like you said, an even bigger cycle where things are fully conjunct.
yeah,
Um,
it's all
but
about cycles and about judgment periods and
and when
reaping
they
that
when they
happen.
frequency, when like maybe a 12-year cycle coincides with a 7-year cycle and a 19-year cycle, right?
Exactly. Yeah, exactly. If you start looking
More
at these
syncs.
cycles and when they hit, you're going to get more extreme kind of outcomes and varied ways of that the judgments are going to happen
More
depending
syncs
on
come
where
with
they're
more
at.
coincidences.
Yep, exactly. So yeah, if you have very water, because of the elements, right? So if you have very water like things, then it might all just be water related, and then it'll just be large water events. If you have fire elements, also water, then you'll get a little bit of fire, a little bit of water, a little bit of earth. So there's going to be elemental scenarios unfolding just depending on these alignments and what it is that our judgment is, right? So the better, I believe, the better we get at not allowing the judgment to be a negative one because we're doing the right things, we get better outcomes and we can avoid a lot of these things. And these people that are in positions that are considered elites or whatever, they're the judgment characters. A lot of them are reapers. And that's what people need to take into consideration, is that God created a faction or an energetic force that is there to give us the pressure or give us the judgment, just like we have judges in our society and we have police officers and all these things, right? That's a necessary component to existence, or you're going to get characters that will just take control of everything and just completely take over and take advantage of people. So
Totally.
you don't want that sort of society. You don't want that sort of outcome in
It's crazy
existence.
how many people just want to not see what's going on. I think that's a bigger, I don't know if this is like a horrible pun, but to be a not see-er, you know what I mean? Like that's a lot of what I see a lot of the time.
Yeah, yeah, exactly. There's a lot of people that want to bury their head in the sand and don't really want to recognize that this world is going to be dualistic, that it to get the benefits of this world and to continue those benefits, you have to work for it and you have to structure things correctly. You can't just hope that the best outcome is going to happen because you pray to God. God isn't looking for prayers. God's looking for people that are doers, right? And not just hopers, right? You're praying to yourself technically, and you're trying to get answers on how is it that you overcome the situation. You're not getting miracles that happen. Those are what real coincidences are, is if something happens and it just happens in your favor on accident, that is somewhat to do with God just trying to help other people out, and you just happen to be a benefactor of that situation.